living a life outside of music is important because if you don't have room for your emotions or whatever, what is inspiring your music? And, you know, a moment that I can remember very vividly from my master's where I was learning kinds of Rome and I had gone snowshoeing in the mountains in the middle of winter, and we were, you know, there were pines everywhere, trees everywhere, and it was super windy, and so these like little sparkly snowflakes were blowing, you know, across my vision, and that image is what I use to inspire my Pines of Rome. You know, when I'm playing that excerpt, that's what I'm thinking about.
I love that.
But if you're not taking the time to go outside, then you don't have that inspiration.
Yeah.
And so that's what I would say, that actually it brings a lot of depth to your art when you do take time to live your life as well.
Yeah. Hello, and welcome to the Orchestrating Your Career podcast. I'm your host, Rebecca, Becca for short, and I'm a clarinetist who studied at the Eastman School of Music and then went to London to get my master's and PhD, both at the Guildhall School of Music and Drama. Having shifted pathways in my own life, I love hearing about the varied careers musicians can have and how they got there. And that's precisely what we're exploring in this podcast. As I sit down with music graduates to chat about their unique musical journeys, hear their hard-earned wisdom, and learn about how they're orchestrating their own careers. For today's episode, I had the pleasure of chatting with Luci Disano, a clarinetist who got her undergraduate degree from the Eastman School of Music, her master's from the University of Northern Colorado, and her doctorate of conducting from the University of Maryland. She's been a member of the President's Own United States Marine Band since January of 2014, made her conducting debut in 2016, and also works as an arranger. Luci shares her experiences navigating through 3 different degrees, her audition for the U.S. Marine Band, and the comedy of errors that led up to her winning a position, some highlights of her time playing in the band, as well as how she got into conducting and arranging. It's really inspiring to hear how she balances all of these different parts of her career alongside her family life as a wife and a new mother. You're listening to a recording of Luci conducting a wind band under this intro, so stay tuned till the end of the episode to watch some more of her conducting performance. And right now, let's get right into the interview. Hello, Luci, and welcome to the Orchestrating Your Career podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. It's so great to see you again.
You too. It's really cool to reconnect with you. Thank you so much for your willingness to come on and share your musical journey with us. And we know each other from pretty back in the day.
Way back.
We were both in the clarinet studio together at Eastman. I so admired you and looked up to you as a clarinet player. Since then, you have been up to incredible things. It's amazing to hear about all that you've been up to. You are a clarinetist in the U.S. Marine Band, which is amazing. But what people might not realize is that on top of that, you do a lot of other things. You do arranging, conducting, teaching, all kinds of things. So it'll be really cool to dig into all of those different parts of your career and how you balance them in your life today. But before all of that, I would love to just go back to the beginning and hear about how you got into classical music, why the clarinet, and just how it all began for you.
Yeah, I think like a lot of people, I started playing, violin when I was really young. I did the elementary strings program. And then when I got to middle school, I wish I had a better story for you or a more dignified story maybe for how I started playing the clarinet. They had a 5th grade, see the 6th grade band. They're trying to sell band on you, sort of thing. And so they had an instrument zoo after the concert, and me and a bunch of my friends went and tried the clarinet mouthpiece. They had the clarinet mouthpiece alone.
Just alone,
like no barrel, no anything. And so and so we thought, oh, this makes a really funny squeaking sound. This is great. And all my friends were doing it, so I did it. And now, 20-something years later,
still doing it
based on that choice. Yeah.
Oh, cool. So that was just in school.
Yeah. Yeah. 6th grade.
And what made you decide that you wanted to go into music? What was sort of a turning point of like, this is what I want to major in?
Yeah. I don't know if it was ever like a turning point. Like, I don't think you can pinpoint like one moment. It's sort of like a slow burn of, I have always been a kind of person who's the kind of person who's interested in a lot of different things. And so throughout my childhood, it was, well, I'm going to be a vet or a musician, or I'm going to be an astronaut or a musician, whatever it was. The other thing, it was either this or a musician, and musician was just kind of always there. And I guess it never really went away.
How did you decide then on music conservatoire, music school? What was the sort of decision process, and how did you end up at Eastman?
That's a really good question, because you're asking me to remember when I was like 16, 17 years old.
It's a bit of a
my memory is not that good. Yeah, I mean, I just remember Eastman obviously being one of the best music schools in the country. And then I did end up doing a summer festival, what would have been the year before senior year, the summer before senior year, rather. Doing a summer festival where Ken Grant was teaching, and I really liked learning from him, and so that kind of solidified it for me.
Were you sort of deciding between like a university or a conservatoire, or?
Yeah, I remember at that time it being a big thing of, are you going to go to a music school and study only music, or are you going to go somewhere and where you can have a backup plan, a plan B? And I was very much felt the need to have a plan B. And actually that's one of the reasons why Eastman was on the table, I think, because there was that option to do a dual degree at U of R, and I actually ended up trying that for a little while.
Oh, did you?
I did. It didn't last long.
What was it going to be in?
Engineering.
Oh my gosh, wow.
Yeah, which I don't know, maybe I'll get an engineering degree like when I retire or something.
You never know.
That kind of thing is still really interesting to me, but I don't have the same constitution as some of our peers who got, bio degrees and chem degrees, and I don't really know how they did that. I took, I think, one like advanced math class, and I got like 5 weeks in, and about 48 hours before the like drop deadline, I just dropped it. It was like, I need to be spending all of my time on music. That's where I want to be. And no regrets for sure. But yeah, so that was a really big thing, thinking about having a plan B, so I was looking at like Michigan or Minnesota, I know was on the list, places where you could study something else while focusing on music.
So while you were at Eastman, could you just talk a little bit about your career goals? Like, did you have an idea when you were studying of what you wanted to do when you came out with a music degree?
Yeah, this is something I've been thinking about a lot lately. And I think my goals have sort of evolved.
Yeah.
And now that I'm older, I'm not necessarily sure where some of them came from. Like, I remember being in high school and really loving film music and wanting to, be a studio musician. And then at Eastman, my goal was definitely to get into an orchestra or maybe be a doubler and play shows on Broadway or something like that. And again, I'm like, I don't really remember which of those goals came from my soul or whatever, and then which came from kind of external forces. But yeah, those were, I definitely had this sense of like, the straight line that we're running down is we're auditioning to be in orchestras.
Yeah. Could you talk a little more about those maybe external forces? Because I know we were talking just before we started recording, just about a set pathway, and how did you feel about that, and maybe what were those external forces that you felt?
Yeah, and so we sort of talked about this before. I'm not 100% sure where they came from and whether it's fair to put the blame for those feelings on someone else or whether they came from myself. But I definitely had this feeling, when I was of school age, that there was a certain way to do classical music that was successful, and anything other than that, well, you didn't make it. You couldn't handle it, and so I don't really know where that came from, but and honestly, even now, I mean, I've been out of school since I've been out of undergrad for 12 years. I still sometimes, that's still so ingrained in me that I still sometimes feel like, oh, maybe I should have been in orchestra. You know what I mean? Like, it's weird how that, especially when you're young, things like that can sort of soak into your sense of self-worth almost.
Absolutely.
Yeah, but it's not really a satisfying answer, is it?
No. I think it's a hard question anyways to define what those influences are. Because I think a lot of us as musicians feel that and relate to that, but it is hard to define exactly why.
Yeah.
Or like where exactly it comes about, if it's through sort of the training and just the pathways that you've seen other people take before you.
Sure.
The examples that you've been set, and even just like when you think about what a musical career is, the general, first thought that pops into your head is orchestral musician, because that's probably the most common one. So yeah, I think there's a lot of different things.
Right. Well, and there's like some naivety at that age also, that you don't really know. You're coming from being a high school student where your decisions are made for you, and then all of a sudden you're a college student and you're sort of making your own decisions, but I think you're still influenced by the expectations of others a lot more. And now, as 12 years later, as an adult, I'm choosing things that make me happy versus choosing things that make other people happy. But I've also had more life experience. I've seen more of the world. I know, I mean, I don't think I even heard of the Marine Band until probably my junior year of undergrad. You know what I mean? So you don't even know what options are available. And so you just sort of, fall in line with, like, this is what we do. We audition for orchestras.
I think that's really, I think the naivete is really key, especially when you're growing up and, like, all you're doing is playing in sort of orchestras or bands. And then when you're training, that's what you're doing. And so it's sort of easy to think that, like, this is, like, if I'm going into music, this is what I will continue to do.
Yeah.
And it's hard to know what exactly other components that can come into play in a musician's career. So, So you're at Eastman, and you then went on to get a master's. Was that always the idea? Did you know that you were going to go for a master's? Or what were you thinking?
I think it's the same thing, which is that, like, well, this is what you do, right? You go and get a master's. I did, for a while, toy with the idea, and actually I got into the program, the Take 5 program. So I was going to study linguistics for a year.
Oh, interesting.
But ended up choosing to do a master's in clarinet instead, and moved out to Colorado to do that.
So that was at University of
Northern Colorado. Yes. So, which is where I met my husband. So that all worked out.
Yes. How did you decide to go there?
It worked out very well for me. Lauren Jacobson, who was the DMA clarinet player when we were there, got this job teaching at UMC and needed a teaching assistant. And I wasn't even on my radar to go there until that happened, but I jumped at the opportunity, and I'm so glad I did, because I had such a wonderful time there and I learned so much. And I spent like every weekend in the mountains, which it was such a wildly different experience from Eastman. Because Eastman was such an intense environment. And I learned so much, but it was very difficult to take any of it in sometimes, because of just like the pressure cooker that you're in there. And so I got to like go to Colorado and like spend some time looking at trees, I don't know, and exploring parts of my personality that weren't related to music. And so it created, for me anyway, it created more room for all of the stuff that I had learned at Eastman to sort of weave its way in a little bit more and sort of, because I feel like the analogy that I use is like I was a dry sponge at Eastman, and there's all this water sitting on top, and it just like could not soak in. And then I had a little chance to relax in Colorado, and everything that I had sort of taken in over the last 4 years finally like.
That's so cool.
Open.
I have so many questions. Okay, so I'm so interested in this. So you were saying that Lauren Jacobson needed a teaching assistant. So you were doing a master's as a teaching assistant. How did that work with the degree?
So I mean, she had an assistant professor, but I can't remember what I did the first year, but assisting with the studio class and whatever.
And is that like what master's degrees normally look like?
I don't know.
I don't know either. I did my master's in the UK, so I'm like interested in how it.
I mean, I think it's a pretty common thing for there to be assistantships for masters, certainly for DMA. And it's either, a playing component where you're paid to play in the resident woodwind quintet, or, and I'm sure it's different depending on the needs of the different schools.
And the institutions.
But I mean, if you're getting a master's, you're kind of on the path to get a DMA, which is a teaching degree, and so I think there's some level of that comes in when you're a master's student.
That makes sense. Yeah. When you were saying teaching assistant, my mind immediately went to doctorate. So I was like, oh, that's cool that you're able to be doing that already at the master's level.
Yeah.
And like you were saying, because if you're going on your way to a doctorate, like that is the sort of trajectory that you're taking. So it's nice that you're getting to, get on it maybe a bit earlier than some people would think.
Yeah, I mean, and I learned a lot from it too. Like, so the first year that I was there, she had an assistant professor who then joined the Navy band. Actually, she's a conductor in the Navy now.
Oh, wow.
But so the second year, I did a lot more like one-on-one teaching of the students.
Yeah,
and I learned a lot from that experience, just getting to, kind of figure out what does my pedagogy look like, you know what I mean? So that was a really awesome experience.
Yeah. And could you talk some more about the differences between master's and undergraduate experience, and maybe just the structure of your schedule, like the course? Because I loved your analogy of what Eastman prepared you for, and then sort of the fruition of that, I guess, in your master's. Yeah, so like how did the different environments of those two lend itself to that? Does that make sense?
And it's... I think I'm struggling to answer your question just because I feel like it's a really individual, like I don't think, I think an Eastman master's degree versus a UNC master's degree or any other school, like each program is going to be really, really different, right? But for me, I came from this very intense competitive environment at Eastman to UNC, which is it's a teaching college. So a lot of the people I was going to school with were going to be like band teachers, not necessarily there. I mean, there were performance majors too, but it was less of an emphasis on that than at Eastman, certainly. And so I think there was just more room for me. And see, I almost want to like pause here and back up and say, like, if there are any undergraduate students watching this, like, you're not in competition with the people that you're going to school with, but it very much feels that way.
Yeah.
And so I think I just had a little bit more room to breathe, honestly, at UNC. And being in Colorado didn't hurt either because I leapt into this group of friends that had lived in the area a really long time, knew lots of things about the area. So we were hiking every weekend. We were going places. I was hanging out with non-musicians for the first time.
It's a broader sort of experience.
Yeah. And so it kind of gave me like a bigger picture of what life looks like, where I feel like conservatory, at least my experience of conservatory, is it's 100% music all the time, and there's not really a whole lot of discussion of what do you want your work-life balance to look like, what other things are you interested, like who are you as a human, sort of things. Because they are so focused on, getting you to an extremely high level of performance in an extremely competitive field, which I understand. So it's just a different pride.
I understand. So when you were at UNC, had your career aspirations shifted or changed at all? Were you thinking more, especially doing more teaching yourself, of like going down that route, or how did that evolve?
At that time, no. I think at that time I still sort of viewed teaching as like the backup plan. And I was really, at that point, I had started having a little bit of success in auditions.
So you were already taking auditions?
Oh, yeah. I started taking auditions as a sophomore in college. I didn't really have any business taking them until maybe...
It's always good to get experience.
It is, but I didn't really start auditioning, or like, I don't feel like it counts. The product that I was presenting... my senior year was really when I started to present something passable. And I started advancing and making finals and things like that. I really focused in on that, especially, so like at the end of my senior year, I made finals with the Navy Band. And then I went to UNC, and Lauren Jacobson had been in the President's Own before. And so I was still taking, I still took orchestral auditions, but if there was a premier band audition, I was there. And so that focused in a little bit, and I was still doing some doubling work. So like I played at a dinner theater out there 6 shows a week.
Oh, cool.
That was an experience too. But yeah, pretty much I would say the same goals that I have in undergrad.
How's the audition process like? And also, because you had said that you didn't really know about U.S. Military bands. So what made you think, oh, actually, like that could be a pathway I go down instead of the orchestral one?
Yeah, I don't really know. I think it was just you're taking auditions, you're looking for a job.
Yeah.
That's a job.
Taking what you can get.
Yeah. I mean, and that's the thing in music. People ask me all the time, like, why did you choose the Marine Band? And while there are some things about the Marine Band that I think make me, particularly suited to do that job and make that job a really good fit for my life, that's not why I picked it.
Yeah.
I picked it because they said yes. Yeah. I mean, it's so competitive, and the numbers of people who win auditions are so small that it's you don't really get to call your shot very often, or I'm not the kind of person who gets to call their shot in this industry.
I think that's so interesting, because I think in our industry it really is they're picking you. You're just taking all the opportunities you kind of have. I mean, not everyone, but this is a lot of musicians.
There are a few, I think, annoying people who just go straight at the thing, but I'm not one of those people.
And it's interesting, because I feel like the general job discourse is like, why did you pick the career you're in, or the job that you're in, the specific job you're in, and it's like, oh, for us it's more like they selected you, and amazing that they did.
I feel very fortunate.
That's cool. Yeah, we're going to talk a lot about the Marine Band, because I think that's, I feel like there's so much about that people might not realize or know about how it works to be a musician in there. But before we get there, could you talk about the end of your master's, and what were you thinking as you were approaching the end of this degree about, I'm maybe entering the musical career force, like, what am I doing?
Yeah, I was thinking, oh my God, why don't I have a job yet? I mean, that's what I was thinking. Actually, I found a couple of years ago, I was digging through some old papers, and I found a journal entry from my second year of my master's.
Oh, wow.
Literally 6 months before I won my audition. And I forget the specifics of it, but it was basically I don't know, I think I'm ready to quit.
Wow.
You know what I mean? It was just, I have always had unrealistic expectations of myself, but I thought, we were supposed to be done 5 years ago. Why are we, you know what I mean? So that's where I was at the end of my master's. And I think probably a lot of people feel the same way. We talked a little bit earlier about the, so what's next question. And that's really horrible feeling question, you know what I mean?
You have no idea what's next.
Which now I'm at a point in my life where I'm like, you have no idea. Well, that's something really cool is coming. If you can't even imagine what that thing is yet, you just buckle up, because it's going to be great. But, when you're 21, 22, and you have student loans, and you're in an extremely competitive field going, am I ever going to be able to eat? It's not a nice feeling. So that's kind of where I was at the second year of my master's, and, applied. Did I apply to DMA programs? No, I only applied to artist diploma. What's the other word from? I can't remember, but what they call it. But the please let me stay in school degree. So I applied to a few of those programs, and ended up getting into NEC, which conveniently was in the city where my boyfriend lived. So that's where I ended up.
So you moved to Boston?
I did, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that was after a 2-year master's. Okay, so you moved to Boston, and how long was that?
Yeah, I think it's supposed to be a 2-year program, but I lasted 3 months. Because I got the Marine Band job.
You want a job?
Yeah, so I had the really fun but bizarre experience of I had my last concert of the fall, and then I went and took the Marine Band audition, and I drove back the next day and walked into the registrar's office and was like, I'm leaving. I got a job. And we're like, great. Congratulations. Bye. I mean, everyone was gone for the semester, so I just sort of cleaned out my locker and unceremoniously left.
Wow.
It was really bizarre.
Interesting.
But, I was ready to start working.
Okay, so can you talk about the audition experience? How did you prepare? And what was the audition day like? I was very into the whole, I don't know if you know, Noah Kageyama, Bulletproof Musician, that sort of performance psychology. I did a very deep dive into that stuff when I was in my master's. And so I did all kinds of things from running up and down the stairs before playing excerpts to now I have the if someone comes to play a mock audition for me now, I have these little foam cat toys that I'll just throw at them while they're playing. Any distraction.
Distraction, adversity, anything to make it feel like the audition room is more comfortable than what you're used to, or at least as comfortable as what you're used to. Maybe we shouldn't tell people that I throw cat toys at people.
No, I think it's
But so doing all that kind of stuff, and like I had like a master list that I wouldn't have to remember what to pack for my trip. I wouldn't have to remember what to pack on the audition day. It was all on a list. Yeah. Like there was one time that I forgot a swab for the audition, and it totally ruined my mental game.
Yes.
So I was like, never again. So I got really intense into that sort of thing, and visualization and all of that stuff.
How many auditions would you say you had taken up to this point? I think
the number is 13.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure, that it's lucky number 13.
And like a mix of military band and orchestra.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, probably about 50-50.
Yeah. Did you have sort of like a practice schedule leading up to the audition?
Yeah.
Or any pre-audition ritual kind of things?
Oh, yes. All kinds. Some of them I can't tell you because
of course.
The secret is what makes them work, right?
We don't want to share
well, no, not that, other people, it wouldn't work for other people.
Their own,
because it's like,
your
own thing, right?
Yeah.
What did I do leading up to the audition? So I think the thing that really helped for this audition is I had to get really good at time management because you have so many excerpts to prepare and only so much time in the day. So I got really into practice journaling and, tracking where my excerpts were and like only practicing the stuff you need to practice or, honing in on the stuff you need to practice. And just really, if there's one excerpt that you're hoping they don't ask, that's the excerpt you practice that day, that sort of thing. So I had like a warm-up routine that I would do every day, which could take an hour or could be truncated down to like 10 minutes if you needed it to. And then it was just sort of triaging, like which excerpts do I need to do today? You're not playing every excerpt every day, but maybe every other day. And like, lots of recording yourself, which is the worst thing imaginable, but you have to do it. Yeah. So it was pretty intense.
Yeah, it sounds like it. I'm interested, especially in practice journaling, because I don't know too much about like what that could look like. Could you just talk about what it is and what it looked like for you?
Yeah, I mean, so for me at that time, it was it's not like, these are my feelings.
Oh, no, yeah.
But, I had this like teeny tiny little notebook and it was like, Brahms, the A's are flat. Like, and so when you have to come back to that excerpt 48 hours later and you forget what was wrong with it, it's written right there. Yeah. So it's like super efficient.
So you can just pinpoint what exactly you want to target on these particular excerpts.
Yeah, what you want to target, what if you, oops, I didn't play that one today, I need to make sure I'm playing it today, that sort of thing, just to sort of organize myself.
Yeah. And then also for recording yourself, what were you looking for in those, like when you're going back and listening and to yourself playing these things? What particular things are you looking for?
So all of the sort of like fundamental things, so rhythm, tone, intonation, articulation, making sure. I remember I would record, I can't remember what excerpt it was. What's the Beethoven that's got so many rests in between? I can't think of it now. It's embarrassing. Is it Beethoven 6?
I wanted to say 6, but I'm not sure.
Okay. Well, some Beethoven.
Possibly 6.
Yeah. But, you want to make sure you're not shortchanging the rest.
Yeah.
So I would listen back to the recording with the metronome on to see just how much I was shortchanging.
Yeah, the one that's like...
Yes, that's what I
Gotcha.
Can you tell it's been a long time since I've taken an audition? So listening for that, or listening for, you put a drone on and play the recording back with the drone on. And it was always Brahms. It was always like the A's and B flats in Brahms that were off. But like really getting down to minute details, because that's the kind of stuff that the committee might not be able to name. Oh, that A was 5 cents flat, but I think it brings a maturity to your playing, and the committee can sort of overall hear that when you have those like really minute details out.
Yeah, that makes sense. That's really helpful. And I appreciate you like going into the nitty gritty, because I just think a lot of times it can be hard to know how to even approach like preparing for these things and practicing. So I think even just hearing about your process, which obviously worked, and getting some better,
at least once,
and getting some more specific ideas of like, oh, these are some things I can add to my own practice regime, and like if you're not already doing it.
Yeah.
I think it can be really helpful. Now, could you talk about the audition day and just what happened?
Yeah. So this is, I think, a pretty good story. So the audition was over 2 days, which is normal for marine band auditions. And the first day, honestly, I don't remember that much, except that I put my clarinet away after the preliminary round. And I don't know if you remember this being a big Ken Grant thing. He was like, never put your instrument away until they tell you to go home. And so I never did. Every audition I ever went to, I always kept my clarinet out until they told me to go home, just in case, no matter how badly I thought I played. And then for this one, I put it away. And I advanced. So,
of course.
Which actually, there's a lesson there, which is that, like, don't lose your head in an audition if you think you're playing badly, because this is why we record, right? Because what you think you're hearing and what the committee is hearing might be two different things. Because you can't multitask the playing and listening very well. So anyway, so the first day I advanced. That's all I really remember about that. Oh, no, that's not true. I have to go back.
We're digging into the recesses.
Yes, because it is memorable. The day before the audition is actually the memorable part, because I had driven down from Boston, which should be like a 7-hour drive, 8-hour drive maybe, on a bad day, 9. But we had some crazy winter storm come through, and I was like driving in just like blizzard conditions, holding the steering wheel for 11 hours.
Oh my goodness.
And I got to my hotel room. I ordered room service, which for a music student, like, you have to know how bad I was feeling if I was ordering room service. And the room service person was adamant, like, make sure you leave your tray outside your room when you're done. Like, they said this like 4 times. I'm like, fine. So I have my room service. I'm ready to crash. I have my rock star pajama pants on. They have my mommy made them for me. They have like guitars on them. And I open my door. I lean over and put my tray down, and I realize that my entire body is outside the door. And I hear it click behind me.
Oh no.
So and this was in Pentagon City, which is like a very suits nicer, literally right next to the Pentagon. This is where all the fancy business people stay, right? So I had to like waltz down to the lobby with my rock star pajamas and no shoes. And there was a whole line of suited businessmen at the desk. And I just said, "Excuse me, gentlemen, I have no shoes. I will be cutting the line. Thank you very much." And so I got my key and went back in shame. So that was memorable.
Amazing.
But it's, I say that just to give you a sense that I was so drained for this audition to begin with. And it only gets better. Because, so I passed the first round, miraculously, I guess. And then for the second day, I was supposed to play at 1 o'clock, I think, 1 p.m. And I did this thing, talking about intense audition preparation. I would wake up at like 4 a.m. Every day for about a month leading up to the audition, because the check-in's at 7. You have to be dressed and ready to go at 7. If you want to play early, I just wanted to be like awake enough to do that. So I had been accustomed to like going to bed, I don't know, 6, 7 o'clock, something crazy.
Wow.
And realizing that like, I'm going to have to play at 1 p.m. If this goes on for a while, I'm going to be asleep. So I stayed up that night as long as I possibly could to hopefully give myself a chance at sleeping in. And I wake up to a phone call at 6 a.m. from my now section commander saying there's another storm coming through. They've moved up the audition.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it's going to start at 10.
Oh no.
And you're the first person to play.
Oh my god.
Yes.
The stress.
Yeah.
I feel stressed just thinking about it.
I know, it's really stressful, right? So, but it ended up working in my favor. So I roll in, I do the whole thing, whatever. It's really stressful. And when I say it worked in my favor, because by the time I got there, we, part of the finals for the Marine Band audition at that time was you do some sight reading, which that's normal for military bands, and I practiced sight reading in my audition preparation as well. But they put something in front of me, and I can't remember exactly which Harry Potter, but it was some really fast, notey Harry Potter thing, and they're like, and they give you like a metronome mark, they like pull the metronome up to your ear to say like play it this fast. It was like 160 or something.
Oh my gosh.
And I'm like, really? Okay. And so I think I just like there's the driving the day before, the waking me up early, the like throwing so many things at me that I think at that point I was just like, whatever, like let's be done with this. And I guess it worked out because I played reasonably. I wasn't in my head. Right. This is a big thing, honestly, that I guess I want to highlight. And another reason why I think I won this audition and not other ones, perhaps, is that I didn't have the feeling that I needed this job, which I did. I mean, I needed to eat, but I had a lot of. There were a lot of things I liked about my life in Boston. My boyfriend was in Boston. Getting this job might mean breaking up with my boyfriend. It didn't work out that way, thankfully, but it wasn't like. I didn't have this feeling as I was playing of like, I must do this to survive. And I think that's where you can get into trouble. And so all of these things going wrong, this sort of like comedy of errors the entire way through the audition, I think actually worked in my favor.
And even just, the audition moving up, then not having, like, sort of not even having the time to sit and stew and sort of be nervous and let all those thoughts consume you because you couldn't. Yeah, you're like almost too tired to be anxious, so it just kind of frees you up a little bit. Wow. That's crazy.
I know. It's a wild story, isn't it?
Yeah. My favorite is the Harry Potter sight reading.
You like that? Yeah. Now I enjoy playing like the Harry Potter stuff in the band, but at the time
I mean, to sight read it would not be fun.
No, definitely not. Yeah.
Cool. Can you remember the moment you won? Like, how did you get the news?
Yeah, we were, so I can't remember how many finalists there were, but maybe 3 of us in the room, and I knew both of the other, so actually both, if I'm correct, that it was just 3 of us. We're all in the band now.
Wow. So there are 3 finalists.
There were 3 finalists. They hired 2 of us that day. And like one of my really good friends was the person who didn't get the job. Aww. And so I was so fried that I didn't have any feelings left anyway. Yeah. So there's that. But also I was standing next to a friend of mine who didn't get a job, so I didn't want to be like, hooray for me! Yeah. You know what I mean? Yeah. So I just like very, calmly accepted the news. And then I think went out to lunch with some of the, lunch or dinner with some of the other members of the section.
So you found, how long after?
Oh, it was like immediately after. Immediately. Yeah, we had, let's do the first round, and then there was a final round, or a semifinal round, I think. And then I think there were 3 rounds. And then, they just told us all after. So went straight to lunch with the clarinet section. And I remember actually the principal clarinet saying to me, months later or years later, like, you didn't really seem happy about it. Like, you didn't really seem excited. It's like, I was so tired.
It's a lot.
Yeah, it was a lot. No, it really was. I think, and maybe other people have this, relief and like hooray feeling like they just want a job, but it wasn't like that for me at all. It was, almost stressful because I had to come home and I had to quit my job and I had to figure out how I was moving, and so it wasn't that like arrival that I think people might imagine. Yeah. But maybe I'm weird. That's also possible.
No, I think it makes sense. And like you say, like everyone will have different experiences and like be in different places in their life when that happens.
Totally.
So I think it's just different for everyone. But I mean, in general, it's just like a crazy whirlwind of stuff that was happening to you.
It's a lot to take in.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah. You said you had a job in Boston?
Yeah, well, I mean, like a work-study job. Okay. Actually, it was a really cool work-study job. I worked for From the Top.
That is cool.
Yeah.
What were you doing for them?
Oh, like, I was a tech intern, I think. Wow. Yeah, so doing, like, grunt work for their IT guy. But I loved it because he was, I got to be in an office, like a professional office that was involved in, like, this really cool, I mean, I grew up hearing From the Top, I worked for NPR. So I liked it. I mean, not that I was sad to leave that to go do the thing that I had spent 7 years training to do, but still it was, I felt like a responsibility to, I don't know, give them as much notice as possible or something. So, it was interesting.
Yeah. So from the time you found out you won the audition to starting the job, can you sort of go through the time frame of what that was?
Yeah, it wasn't too long. So I took the audition like beginning of December, and I ended up like reporting to the Marine Band, I think the first week of February.
Oh wow, okay.
Yeah, so it happened fairly quickly, which is not always the case like with military bands, sometimes people have trouble with MEPS, and it can take months or even years.
With MEPS.
Which is I can't remember what the acronym stands for, but it's basically where you go to enlist.
Okay.
Yeah.
Like onboarding kind of.
Yeah.
For military bands.
But like not for the band, for the Marine Corps.
Gotcha.
So like you go and you sign up, and everybody else gets on a bus and goes to boot camp, and then you have to explain to them, like, no, please don't put me on that bus. I don't go on that bus.
Yeah, because if people don't know, the Marine Band is possibly the only military band, but you don't have to do...
You think Coast Guard doesn't either, but don't quote me on it.
Yeah.
It is an unusual thing. Most of my friends have really interesting boot camp stories.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah.
Were you glad not to have to do that?
Yes. I'm not sure I could survive Marine boot camp. It's a very intense...
I can imagine it would be.
So, and that's like, we get this question all the time in the Marine Band of like, are you a real Marine? Do you go to boot camp? And the answer is, yes, we are, but no, we don't. Because we get our training at university. I've had 7 years of training at the thing that I'm doing professionally. And so because the Marine Band has no combat mission, then there's no reason for us to go be trained in that kind of stuff. So
So now you've been in the Marine Band for 10 years.
Almost 10 years.
Wow. And how has your experience been during that time? Like, how has your role changed as you've been in the section longer, like rising up the ranks or things like that? Like, how is it?
So as you are in the organization longer, I was just promoted to gunnery sergeant, so they expect...
Congratulations.
Thank you. So they expect more leadership out of the more senior ranks. But in terms of how it's changed, the clarinet section is great in that we rotate a lot. So it's not like I'm getting to play first all that much more often.
So you switch around.
Yeah, we switch around a lot. And like, for maybe more... like high profile or intense jobs, like they're not going to throw a new person in on like a publicly televised house thing immediately, right? So there's a little bit more of that on my plate now than there would have been when I was first in, but by and large the playing hasn't changed too much. I'd say probably the biggest change is that I've been able to pick up more things that are interesting to me besides just playing the clarinet. So this is a pretty big thing in the military bands where most, if not, well, not all, but a lot of the bands have collateral duties that you have to do. You don't have to do that in the Marine Band, but it's available. So like one of the things that I've started doing in the last couple of years is assistant producing.
Wow.
Yeah, for our concerts, which has been really, really fun.
That's so cool. How did you get involved in that?
So I have a degree in conducting, and I've spent a lot of time doing score study. And so the job of the assistant producer is to look at the score and help our video team. They're not reading a score and changing camera angles at the same time. So you're reading the score so that they know who's playing and who to sort of point the camera at, basically.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I get to combine, the things that I love doing with score study, conducting component with something else. And it's really interesting getting into that world and just learning about, that's a craft in and of itself that I have not yet mastered, but I'm working on.
Developing.
And that's one of the really cool things about the Marine Band is there are lots of little opportunities like that to do things that interest you and to specialize in something, in addition to your instrument.
That is really cool. Yeah. And you mentioned that you have a degree in conducting, and so that's a DMA?
Yes.
Yeah. So could you talk about how that came about? Where did your interest come in even getting into conducting?
Yeah. So I don't remember how I initially got interested in conducting. I took Mark Scatterbay's conducting class at Eastman. But I didn't actually continue with it at all after that for several years because I think at that point my personality was not ready to be a conductor. I have a very vivid memory of one of the graduate assistants saying like, "Oh, you have to be expressive and make faces," and I was like, "I am not to do that. Thank you very much."
Yeah.
So I don't remember what kind of gave me the idea to get back into that, but the Marine Band offers a conductor training program every year, and so with that you get to do a couple of master classes. They send you to a conducting workshop, and then you get to conduct half of a summer concert. So I did that my second year in the band, I think.
Wow.
And I just had so much fun.
Yeah. Do a lot of people in the band do that?
Not a lot. They I think we offer it to up to 3 people a year. So not too many people. But a handful I know have done it, and it's a really great experience.
Yeah.
I think I just really liked getting to be in touch with music in a different way. You know, you're playing your instrument, you're focused on tone production, and you know, I've like never been like a gearhead. I'm not into like reeds or ligatures or anything like that. But I could sit with my head in the score for hours. You know what I mean? That really digging into what was this composer thinking? How does this piece work? That kind of stuff really interests me a lot. And so conducting was something that enabled me to do that. So yeah, I did that initial training program, and I've done it a couple of times since. And then ended up auditioning for University of Maryland, studying with Mike Boda. And that was just a really great experience because I got to have a ton of podium time at that school. I got to like spend a lot of time really working on like the craft of conducting. It was cut short somewhat by the pandemic, but it was cool to add that. And I found that sort of self-improvement, academic, learning something new, having that on my plate in addition to my job, which was insane. I think I had like a standing brunch date with my husband every Sunday, and that was pretty much when he saw me for a couple of years. But it really, I liked the balance of those two things. So.
How was the DMA experience? I mean, you've touched on it some, but could you talk a little bit more about how you were balancing that with playing, and like how much time out of sort of a week was it taking you?
All of it. All of the time. I mean, I would have, so where we lived at the time, I would sometimes have to do the triangle, I called it. So like school was up north, work was south, and my house was east.
Oh wow.
So, you know, you would either, and some days I would have like go to class in the morning, go to work in the afternoon, go back to class in the evening, then go home. Like it was very intense. And sometimes I would, you know, leave my house at 7 a.m. and not get home until 9:30 at night. And it was a lot. I don't know that I have a good answer for how I balanced those things.
You just did what you had to do.
I just did what I had to do. I mean, exercise helped a little bit. I was really into like fitness at that point. I think I probably would have lost my mind otherwise. Just to like, that helped, I think, keep my brain healthy. But it was a lot.
So coming out with your DMA and conducting, what have your conducting experiences been? Because I know that you did get to conduct the Marine Band. Which is really cool.
I've had actually several opportunities to conduct the Marine Band, which has been really awesome. And it's led to some other things too. So like strictly conducting, I'm actually going to be teaching. I'm going to be the...
Teaching conducting?
No, I'm not teaching conducting. I'm going to be the director of the symphonic band at Washington College.
Oh, wow. Congratulations.
Thank you.
That's amazing.
So it has offered me opportunities literally just straight up doing conducting. But I also, you know, as part of my degree program, I did a arranging class. And
so that's how arranging sort of came into your sphere of things as well.
It's something that I had been interested in. And arranging, I want to be careful using the word arranging, transcribing. I won't be semantically difficult differentiating between those two things. But I had done a lot of, not a lot, but a little bit of transcribing on the side, just things that interested me, things that I wanted to play. And I wanted to take an orchestration class there, and ended up doing it as an independent study because that's how it worked out. And for my final project, I did a transcription of George Walker's Lyric for Strings, but for a wind ensemble. And that actually ended up being published, and it's going to be performed at Midwest this year.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Oh, my gosh. Will you be there for it?
Yes.
Oh,
that's the
so
plan
cool.
anyway. Yeah.
Wow. I'm just curious for arranging, because I feel like especially arranging for a whole wind band.
Yeah.
Like, how did you learn how to do all the different pieces and like taking something and like for all the different instrumentation? Yeah. How was that process for you?
Yeah, it was like the way that I did it, I think, was a little bit unusual, right? Because normally you would have, I think, an orchestration class, and you would have projects, and you would have players come in and read the projects, and I didn't really have that luxury because it was just me. So I was really lucky that the teacher that I had supervising my independent study was a composer and was really knowledgeable, about that kind of thing. So the lyric for band went through many iterations before it got to its final version, and actually ended up doing, a reading session with the University of Maryland. It's been performed by University of Maryland a couple of times. The Marine Band, I got to conduct the Marine Band playing it at Yards Park.
Oh, okay.
And at the Marine Barracks. But so there have been a couple of tweaks since then too, you know what I mean? Just things that I'm learning as I go.
Yeah, of course.
I sent, more than one screenshot to players that I know and said, is this possible? And do you hate me for writing this?
Yeah. Do you feel like you've had to know how to play all the different instruments to arrange for them?
No, I mean, so I can play most of the woodwinds, which helps a lot.
Yeah.
But then I think, there are books that you can read that say, this is the range for the instrument. But then you can also just study scores, other people who have written for that instrument, and you can kind of tell what sounds good and what doesn't. Yeah. And figure out, maybe I shouldn't be writing that high soon, or you know what I mean? Something like that. Yeah. So it's been an interesting process that I maybe haven't gone at the most direct way, but yeah.
That's cool.
Thanks.
Did arranging come into your DMA? Or can you just talk a bit about finishing your DMA and what was that about? Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm actually still, even though I've graduated and my dissertation is done, I'm still working on it because I wrote my dissertation on a piece that the Marine Band actually premiered several years ago, which is Michael Gilbertson's Usonian Dwellings.
Okay.
Which is a really cool piece, and it's inspired by two Frank Lloyd Wright buildings, which I think is just really, really neat. But I wrote my dissertation on this piece, and typically as part of a conductor's dissertation, if you're writing it on a piece of music, is you'll perform that piece of music, and then you can write sort of, conductor notes or things, you know what I mean, as part of the dissertation. I didn't have that luxury because I wrote my dissertation in the middle of COVID and there were no performances happening. So this is, even though I graduated, I think in 2021, the performance is finally going to happen next spring. Cool. So I'm finally going to get to conduct this piece that I've been studying for 4 years or something.
Wow. Yeah. Amazing.
Yeah.
That's really exciting. It's like the end of this long chapter.
Yes. I'm ready for this chapter to end. Yeah. I don't know about you. But then there's the little extra icing of COVID on top.
Yeah. I understand.
Yeah. Ready to move on from that.
Yeah. How did COVID affect the other parts of your job, in the Marine Band and stuff?
Yeah. It was really tough because, nobody knew what the right thing to do was at that time.
Yeah.
So it was very stressful, and I think everyone would say that, though that's not unique to the Marine Band. And I was able to do some things that I'm really proud of. We did, early on, we did a, what's the name of that? The mosaic video thing. Now I can't remember what it's called, but where I had 9 clarinet players recording from their homes, and I put it all together, and one of our other clarinet players transcribed a Sousa march for this, ensemble and things like that. Basically, just trying to find creative ways to reach people and to be available to people who are stuck in their homes, and it was an interesting time. I'm glad that we're not there anymore. Yeah. I think, honestly, the hardest thing for me was the music making at that time, because you're sitting so far apart from people. And
how did you guys do it? Because I assume at one point you probably weren't performing at all.
Right.
And then you were
very early on, when everyone was trying to figure out what was going on. But that didn't last all that long. And then there was doing outdoor playing, or if you're inside, it was an evolution. I think every month it was something different, because as the science was evolving, we were evolving with it. Yeah. But, you're 6 feet apart, you have barricades, you're only playing for 20 minutes and then taking a 20-minute break, these kinds of things. And it's so nice to... I feel like the thing that you lose with that, of course, is the human connection part of music, which for me is really what makes it interesting. Yeah. Or a large part, anyway, of what makes it interesting. Yeah. And that's part of why I'm into conducting, because I get to engage with every player on the stage in a way that I don't get to as a clarinet player.
Yeah.
But so for years we were kind of missing that, and now it's back, which I'm very glad about.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Can you talk some about just what your job looks like now as a marine band clarinetist, and maybe if you could pull out one of the coolest experiences or like most memorable experiences that you've had?
Yeah. Okay, I want to think carefully about most memorable experiences because I have a ton of them.
I'm sure.
I want to think of the right one.
Yeah. Maybe you could start by just detailing the kinds of things that the marine band does.
We do all kinds of things.
Yeah.
And that's part of what I love about the job is it's really, really interesting. No 2 days look alike. This morning I was on a panel judging a composition competition.
Oh, wow.
Last week I was playing a concert. Next week I might be marching a ceremony. Actually, I am marching a ceremony. Next week I have a parade. So, but we do all kinds of things from, performing funerals at Arlington, ceremonies at the White House, at the Commandant's house, concerts, all over the DC area and all over the country. I've gotten to travel to Japan. That's probably a career highlight right there. That and getting to shake hands with President Obama. It's, I get to be up close and personal for all of these historic events and, get to witness history in a way that most people don't get to. So it's got, I get to play music and I get to do the thing that I love. But there's this extra element to it, which I think just really makes it very, very interesting.
It sounds really cool. And I love how diverse it is.
Yeah.
Because I think especially a lot of people going to music can feel like all they'll be doing in their jobs is just sitting down and playing their instrument.
Yeah.
But actually there's so many different things that you're doing. Not even just, if you add in your conducting and arranging, that's like even more. But even aside from that, just in your role as a clarinetist, there's a lot of variety, it sounds like, which is cool.
Yeah. We have, we're playing for so many different audiences and for so many different purposes that it's like we have to wear all of these hats and do them all at the highest level, which is, it's very inspiring to see, I'm just a clarinet player, but, we have our brass players and they play these, wild outdoor ceremonies. That's the one I'm thinking of. There was one concert, maybe it was inauguration, someplace where it was just very cold and we'd been out there for a very long time and the brass players had no business playing as well as they did, but they just absolutely nailed it. And you're like, I am witnessing this. It's just wild.
Amazing.
Yeah.
And I have to ask, you said you shook hands with President Obama. How did this happen?
Actually, not only did I shake hands with President Obama, he had his arm around my shoulder at one point. I'll show you the picture when we're done. He went out of his way to shake hands with every single member of the Marine Band.
That's so special.
He, when he was leaving office, invited us over to the White House and spoke to us. And literally, all 160-something members of the band got to shake his hand. It was like a week before he left office or something, which was really, really special.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
How is because you guys play every inauguration ceremony. What is that experience like?
It's one of the wildest things that we do because, it's nationally televised. Everyone in the country is watching you play your instrument. And that's another, the last inauguration that we did, I believe, if I'm remembering correctly, was just really cold.
Yeah.
And we were 6 feet apart and the band had no business sounding any good at all. But then I went and listened to the recording or watched, the video after. It's like, oh, we actually sound very good.
Yeah.
But, you get to play with the last inauguration we played with Lady Gaga. So, you're feet away from dignitaries, presidents and Congress people and celebrities. It's kind of a wild thing.
Yeah. Just a technical question that I've always wondered, but especially when you're playing outside, parades and in the cold like that, are you using the same instrument or a different one or
different ones? Yeah, the band provides us a couple of different instruments, and we I have a clarinet that's been rained on a few times.
Yeah.
That gets, that clarinet plays the marching jobs, and I have my concert instrument that gets a little bit more protected.
Very cool. Is there an experience, a more challenging experience that you can think of from your time? Or just something that's maybe, it doesn't have to be an experience, or just a part of the job that has been a challenge?
I think the hardest part of the job is to show up to all of these different occasions, weather situations, times of day, and to show up prepared to play your best. Like, you know, going back to audition preparation.
I was just thinking that.
Yeah, I mean, if you, I forget if I read this somewhere or probably in one of the like mental game books that I read. This person would have somebody wake them up in the middle of the night to play their excerpts. Yeah. It's like, if you can do that and you can play well, then you know your stuff and you can play the audition. And so, but that's the thing with the Marine Band is, you know, we hold ourselves to this high standard wherever we are, whenever we are. And so, you know, you have to, like, your mental game has to be spot on to make that work.
Yeah. Do you feel like all of that audition preparation you did really helped prepare you for that part of the job?
You know, I never made that connection, but you're probably right. Yeah.
I mean, it couldn't have hurt.
Yeah, no, it definitely did not hurt. Yeah, for sure.
Just looking at sort of your life today, so you're married, you have a beautiful baby.
Thanks.
How do you balance all of these different pieces of your career?
Poorly? I don't know. It's really hard, right? Because you're juggling, especially at the phase that I'm in with parenting, like you're juggling sleep deprivation with, you know, I have a full-time job and I'm starting a part-time job and I have all of these different things that I do. I've had to get really good at time management and organization. But you know, this whole work, I want to be careful how I talk about this whole work-life balance thing, because I think this is a question that comes up a lot for women especially. Yeah. And there's this whole idea of like, you can have it all or you can't have it all. And I think it's, you know, you're constantly triaging what's the most important thing today. And thankfully, I have a very supportive husband who you saw like came in and helped us set up for this. And, you know, if I have an important work thing coming up, he's taking the overnight baby wake-ups the night before so that I can have a brain to do those things. But, you know, it's a balancing act. And some days, you know, the scale tips towards the baby, and some days the scale tips towards your job, and you just sort of have to take it a day at a time.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Do you feel like you sort of have seasons where it's more playing heavy, or like how does conducting and arranging sort of fit into those into your life, I guess?
Yeah, it definitely, there's like an ebb and flow with the way that the Marine Band schedule works. I don't think that there are rest periods, just because I'm not the kind of person that allows myself rest periods. Like if I'm not busy with like one of my many jobs or my child, I'm like out, you know, tending to my bees in the backyard. Or, you know, I'm the kind of person who will always fill my time. Yeah. And I like that. I love that about the Marine Band, that I'm able to do those sort of things and explore all these different facets of my personality. Yeah. But yeah, you definitely have to take the rest where you can get it and not burn out. That's something that I have had to learn, that I definitely did not know when I was younger. I mean, when I was in college, I would just like plow full steam ahead until I got sick. Yeah. And then I would just have to do nothing for a week. Yeah. And I've had to learn as I've gotten older to take rest and to view rest as an essential part of productivity as well. Like, because I can't afford to be sick for a week. You know what I mean? So that's something I've had to learn and that I'm still learning, still imperfect at. Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that's such an important piece, especially in our industry where people are doing so many different things, and where they're trying to find the balance of all of that. Is there anything in particular that you feel, as you are continuing to learn and develop this, that has helped you not get to that point of burnout, and like helped you sort of find rest in the more daily life? Does that make sense?
It does. Unfortunately, my answer is probably not a satisfying one. I got to a point where it was during my doctorate, and I just kept pushing through. Yeah. And I pushed too far. Yeah. Which, I mean, the way that I do things now is healthier, but I don't have any sort of grand insight of, like, you know, how to do that.
And, like, I think even just realizing that, maybe even just knowing, like, where that point was.
Yeah, I think there was a lack of self-awareness in my case, for sure, because, you know, I'm a person who likes to do a lot of things. I like to be always on the go. I don't like to stop.
Yeah.
But realizing that if any of this is going to work, I do have to sometimes stop.
Yeah.
I don't have a good answer. I'm still learning that one.
I think we all are. And I think it's helpful in just hearing, I think like even just hearing about your careers and like all the different parts of it as you're managing, I think it's just helpful to hear that. And also just to know that like it is possible. Because I think, you know, people might not realize that when you're in a military band that you can be doing these other things, that you can have a family, that you can have a kid and a husband and, you know, a part-time job, and like to know that that is possible and to like see that you are doing it. No one will be doing it perfectly.
Right.
But,
and something that I will offer too, now that I'm thinking about it, is realizing that for musicians especially, rest is important.
Yeah.
Living a life outside of music is important because if you don't have a life, if you don't have room for your emotions or whatever, what are you playing about? What is inspiring your music? And, you know, I think part of the reason why, you know, I grew so much when I was in Colorado was because
I was just thinking that,
I had that space, and because I'm the kind of person who's very inspired by nature. Yeah. I got to spend a lot of time in nature, and I have like, I tell this story way too much, but there was like a moment that I can remember very vividly from my master's where I was learning Pines of Rome, and I had gone snowshoeing in the mountains in the middle of winter, and with a bunch of friends, and we were standing on this little hill, and we were, you know, there were pines everywhere, trees everywhere, and it was super windy, and so these like little sparkly snowflakes were blowing, you know, across my vision, and that image is what I use to inspire my Pines of Rome. You know, when I'm playing that excerpt, that's what I'm thinking about.
I love that.
But if you're not taking the time to go outside, then you don't have that inspiration.
Yeah.
And so that's what I would say, that actually it brings a lot of depth to your art when you do take time to live your life as well.
Yeah. I think, exactly what you're saying. It's so important to realize that there's more to honing your craft and, you know, practicing your craft than just being in the practice room.
Absolutely.
And like these experiences that you're having outside in nature, in different, you know, in different parts of your job, all these different things are all like coming back to that main part of making music.
Yeah, that there is in fact more to life than music.
Who would have thought?
And that sort of the life parts are sort of what the music making is about anyway. So I think, you know, there's not, that's something that's maybe not talked about enough, I think, in music schools, that in fact that it is possible and important for you to have a life outside of music and to have a sense of self-worth outside of music. And doing those things will make you a healthier person, which will make you a better musician anyway, so you may as well.
It all comes full circle.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. You basically I think given a great answer already, but if there's anything you wanted to add, I just wanted to ask, like, if you had any piece of advice for young musicians, students at conservatoire, or ones about to enter the career field, what would you say to them?
Okay, I'm so glad you asked this question. I'm ready for this one.
Oh, great.
So a little bit, my first answer is what we just talked about, that there is more to life than music. And, you know, if I could go back and be 19 again, I would be very curious about what makes me happy and what I want out of my life. I did not think about whether I wanted children. I did not think about what I wanted my lifestyle to look like. You know, do you want to be spending nights and weekends performing? Do you want to be, you know, in the case of the Marine Band, do you want to be working every single federal holiday? That's something I don't mind, but someone might. And, you know, what other things light you up in life besides music, and how can you fit these things into your career, because your life is not your career. Your career is part of your life. So that's thing number one. And thing number two is to remember that the people that you go to school with are not your competition. Even if it feels like you're literally competing for the same jobs, because in some cases you are. I've gone to auditions with people that were in our clarinet studio. But there is so much more for you to gain from, you know, your fellow students than you will lose so much if you just look at them as competition.
Yeah.
It's so much better to, I think, learn from the people around you and to form a community with those people, because the people that I went to Eastman with here we are, right?
Yeah.
And the people that I went to school with, I feel like are going to be my friends and my network for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
And so, I would urge people in music school to really focus on those relationships and valuing those relationships and learning from your fellow students versus worrying about, is that person going to get the job and then I never will. It's not like that in the real world. I guess is what I want to say.
Yeah. And I just think it's really cool how, at least, I mean, this won't always happen, but for you in your finals, there are 3 of you, and you said that all 3 of you now are in the Marine Band.
Yeah.
And so you were literally competing for the same job, but now you all are colleagues and playing together. And I think that's really cool, because it won't obviously always work out like that, but your competition, or what feels like your competition, will be your colleagues and your, like you're saying, people that you'll be working with for the rest of your career.
Yeah, or even not even necessarily working with, although that's a big part of it, but just people, I'm texting baby pictures to people that, I, not necessarily clarinet players, but, people I went to school with that are going to be around in my life for decades. And that is so much more valuable than whatever this audition, that audition,
Yeah. I like to end each podcast with a little rapid fire question section. So it's just top of mind, what you think of first. It can just be how you feel today. It doesn't be...
This isn't stressful at all.
It doesn't mean that you're signing up for this is my answer for all time. It's just how you feel today.
Okay.
So, who's your favorite composer?
Oh God. All right, well, today it's John Williams. We just played with him and had a wonderful time. So.
Well, I mean, amazing. Yeah. What more could you want? What was the favorite piece you played of his?
Recently, my favorite piece that we played on this concert, we did the Imperial March.
Oh, yeah.
From Star Wars. And, the entire audience roared after, the first measure. That was a pretty great feeling.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Speaking of movie soundtracks, what's your favorite movie soundtrack?
You know what? Can I give you a non-answer?
Of course.
So I'm actually really into the video game soundtracks.
Okay. That's totally valid.
Yeah. Gareth Coker's soundtrack for Ori and the Blind Forest. And Ori and the Blind Forest 2, the sequel or whatever.
Okay.
I have had those playing in my car constantly.
I don't know it. I'll have to look it up.
He does some really lovely bass clarinet writing.
It can be incredible.
It can be, and the games that music was written for have a really beautiful and compelling story, and so it just complements that really, really well. And his wind writing is actually really, really nice.
Amazing.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah.
What's your favorite piece of classical music?
Right now, my favorite piece is Michael Gilbertson's Usonian Duets. But I don't know. I feel like picking a favorite piece is sort of like picking a favorite child. But that particular child I spent many, many, many hours with.
It's totally valid.
You know.
What genre of music do you listen to the most?
Well, at the moment, we are listening to a lot of Gwen Stefani and Taylor Swift and anything that my child will dance to. Yeah. So we have the Alexa across the room, and that's I think my most listened to song last year was Dolly Parton's 9 to 5.
Great,
because that was the song that made her stop crying. So yeah, it's kind of all over the place right now.
What's the last thing you listened to? Was it one of those?
The last thing I listened to, what did I play for her last night? Yeah, it was probably one of those. Either that or the music for the composition competition that I was working on this morning.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
What are you currently reading?
Ooh, what am I currently reading? I can't remember the title of it. Hold on. Buffering. So I'm not actually reading anything right now because I have a new baby. Yeah. And so I decided this year I'm not going to read any books. I'm doing audiobooks.
Oh, okay. I count that as reading.
Yeah. But I've read a lot of really good ones. The one I just finished was Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. I've been alternating between serious books and like beach reads.
Yeah.
And that one is solidly in the beach read category, but I liked it a lot more than I expected. And it's very compelling.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good to know. Who's a musician you really admire?
Ooh. So, a musician who I really admire is my conducting teacher, Mike Voda. But it's not so much his musicianship that I admire, although he is a fantastic musician. But I admire him more as a person. That, you know, especially now that I'm getting into teaching, this is something I'm thinking about a lot. He has been such a wonderful mentor to me, and he treats his students as people first and musicians second, and that's not universally true.
Yeah.
And I just feel so much gratitude for the way that he supports his students. So that's who's top of mind right now.
Yeah. It makes such a difference, your relationship with your teachers and mentors. Like, they shape who you are.
Yeah, so they really do. Yeah.
Last one. If there was one resource, so like a book, a movie, a song, a podcast, an article, anything that you would recommend that you think someone needs to go check out right now, what would it be?
Oh my gosh, there are so many.
Yeah.
I can't pick one. Okay, so The War of Art, I can't remember who wrote that one. The War of Art is really good if you're thinking about just like your own inner creative blocks and things like that. Winning Ugly is a book that I really like. It's actually a tennis book. This is the book where my sort of making lists for auditions came from, because it's like the thrust of the book is, you know, the author is like, I can beat tennis players who are way better than me because I prepare in this way. You know, I can find these advantages for myself.
Yes.
So that's another really good one. And Performance Success is one that I used a lot when I was auditioning. I found that to be very helpful. Not Audition Success, but Performance Success. It's the same author, but I think Performance Success I found to be much more useful than Audition Success.
Okay.
For some reason.
Interesting.
Sure. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Super helpful. Thank you so much for coming on and just your openness and your willingness to share all these different parts of your career and what you're up to. I think it's really inspiring how you have been balancing all these different pieces of your life and how you've evolved and like changed and taken all these different opportunities as they've come and like let that sort of shape your pathway. It's amazing to hear, and I'm really excited to see what you'll get up to next, especially with some new, you know, opportunities coming up in this teaching position and all of, everything. You're doing amazing things. So it's very cool. It's just the last thing, if there's like anywhere that people could find you, if you have a website or anything, any socials, if people want to check out your music and things like that.
Yep. So probably the best place to look would be lucidisano.com. I'll have updates there for, you know, new arrangements or things like that. Yeah.
Amazing. Okay, I'll link it all in the show notes. So thank you so much for joining, and best of luck with everything for you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for tuning into this episode of the Orchestrating Your Career podcast, and a big thank you to Luci for sharing her story and her advice. The resources mentioned in this episode and where you can connect with Luci are all linked below. You can find the podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and other platforms, as well as get more frequent updates on Instagram. To watch videos of all the episodes and get extra behind-the-scenes content, check out the YouTube channel Orchestrating Your Career. Subscribe so you don't miss anything, and look out for new episodes on the 1st and 15th of every month. Next episode's conversation will be with Emiko Edwards, a pianist who studied at the Juilliard School, the Guildhall School of Music and Drama, and Temple University, and she now works as a performer and educator throughout the US and abroad. Until next time, here's a clip of Luci conducting to end the episode. So, take it away, Luci.